Alright, we are back with the second part of the Star Wars special. This is, the Star Wars Retrospective.
Down one man, of course.
Down one man, sadly, as our good man here, Dylan, had to leave. However, you still have us, three.
May the Force be with him.
May the Force be with him as he does whatever he needs to do. I think it's sleep. But, This part, anyway, will essentially just be... talking about our own experiences with Star Wars in general, and sort of the first part will be ranking the Star Wars things. But besides that, most of this is just sort of a bit of a rant on the whole Star Wars thing. So basically, free reign to talk about whatever. But we'll get straight into it. First thing we will talk about is ranking the Star Wars films. So all the films, all the 9 films, all the films excluding Rogue One and Solo, mainly because this is sort of just the Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga films. So the 9 films from each of the trilogies, the original, prequel, and the sequel. I guess I'll go first, from best to worst in terms of these 9 films. So for me, we'll say them all first, and then we'll discuss later. So
it's all subjective.
Yes, okay, this is all subjective. I'm going to say this again. I sort of said this last one. This is all subjective opinions. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion and their own enjoyment of whatever. So if I put your film at the end, just don't fucking listen to me. So ranking them from best to worst for me would be, starting off, I really leaned into this last part, Rise of Skywalker. The second one I actually would have is Revenge of the Sith. Then I would have A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. Then I had Force Awakens, Return of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, The Last Jedi, and then Attack of the Clones would be last for me. Who wants to go next?
My favourite Star Wars film is Empire Strikes Back. It used to be Return of the Jedi, but just recently I've just watched Empire and just enjoyed it more. So next is Return of the Jedi. After that is A New Hope. So I've got the 3 original trilogy. And then after that, I've got Revenge of the Sith. Then I've got The Force Awakens. Then I've got The Last Jedi. And then I've got Phantom Menace. And then Rise of Skywalker. And then lastly, Attack of the Clones.
What about you, Christian?
Yeah, so for me, it's basically like OG mixed with sequel, and then all the prequels last. But that's it. But specifically, definitely just the first one. The very first one is definitely my top. A New Hope straight off the bat, and then definitely Empire Strikes Back. I can see why Alex really loves that one as his favorite. It's almost a tie with me. So Empire Strikes Back. So A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and then I have Rise of Skywalker, and then I have Return of the Jedi, and then I have The Last Jedi, and then Force Awakens, and then the prequels. I've kind of just listed them as like a 3-way tie,
Okay, yeah.
Because I haven't seen them in a while, and I'd really have to rewatch them to reevaluate that. So I've just put them as like a tie for that.
I think this leads on to what Alex said anyway with the last podcast, if people have listened to that. So I would say the reason why it's Rise of Skywalker because it leans on everything else for me. So it leans on everything else because for me, as I said, it ties up everything for my own opinion's sake for me, and it makes everything to me make sense in my own little mind, my own little Star Wars universe in my head. I'm like, yes, that's what I wanted. It had everything that I wanted in it, out of all the films that, well, I guess because in terms of watching them all, this is the newest one. The expectations were all met and exceeded for me. Revenge of the Sith was the next one, more or less because, one, it was sort of like, I guess, sort of that climactic thing of where sort of how it all, really ended with the, before the original trilogy, how it all became the original trilogy with everything. And it's sort of, in terms of like characters and everything, compared to the Attack of the Clones, it really delved into each of them and sort of really gave them all a proper purpose and gave them all the proper things they needed to really shine in the sense of development sake. Anyway, how Anakin obviously went to the dark side, and Obi-Wan, they tried to fight and everything, but it all failed in the end, and Darth Sidious rises up and takes over, becomes Emperor and stuff like that. The next one's New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. I'm probably going to talk about this with you guys, but I don't know, like, to be honest, I don't see all the big appeal of putting Empire Strikes Back, like, at my top film, more or less.
Seriously
because
don't?
No, I don't, because I don't know, there's just something about it that doesn't necessarily ring with me, but I'll talk about it in a bit. New Hope, though, I said that. Force Awakens, one, I guess the big thing of that is visually and the way it sort of stays true to what the originals did, but also went a little bit away with the different characters and stuff like that, the beginning of a whole new era. Return of the Jedi, after that obviously had its, it's sort of tying up everything for the original trilogy anyway, and had sort of the development of character in the sense of towards the end with the confrontation, stuff like that, which sort of mirrored for me that Revenge of the Sith, but for me, Revenge of the Sith just did it a bit, I don't know, for me a little bit better. And the last three, Phantom Menace, I think everything besides, everything not to do with Tatooine, or even that matter for much of Naboo, I just like the fucking last part with Darth Maul kicking ass and fighting Qui-Gon Jinn, and that I thought that was like the best part. Last Jedi, I consider it more of like an artsy film sort of thing. I think you said that a bit, Alex. It's sort of like it took a different direction, and to me it just didn't really work. And to me, all I say to it is that the whole fucking film's a chase scene. I can't really say much else than that. And Attack of the Clones, the only reason why I liked it was because at the end with the clones, with the fucking title, where the clone troopers attack the droids, and that was it. That super cool fight at the end there, and with Yoda and stuff like that. But besides that was basically it.
See, that's interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead and shit on me.
Well, I was just going to say that obviously my first is Empire Strikes Back, because this is something that I probably am going to say, particularly to URL, because Christian agreed with me that Empire Strikes Back is great. That I feel like when you say that you don't really get the appeal of Empire Strikes Back, you're forgetting just how much Empire Strikes Back really brought to Star Wars, right? So you literally said that the only reason you like Attack of the Clones is because of Yoda. Yoda was introduced in Empire Strikes Back.
Well, not just Yoda, but I know what you mean, yeah.
Empire Strikes Back was so fundamental to creating a Star Wars story that, to me, it almost seems completely moot point to say that it isn't the best, because the first film, while I admit it was very good, and it's still like one of my top, definitely, I feel that this is just from a personal perspective. I feel like the film's great, but I also feel that from a more personal perspective, I've played like all the Lego Star Wars games. I've seen I've seen the story of the first film so many times that it almost is just kind of dull, I guess now. Not to say it isn't bad.
So like too much it's technically a sense of repetition.
Yeah, it's too much exposure.
Yeah,
to the
I get that.
Whereas
that's basically why I had it at my top for A New Hope, because I haven't seen it too much, right? Yeah. Otherwise, I would actually have Empire at my top, because like that's why it's at my second. Because technically, like for me, A New Hope, oh my god,
said,
it's so OG. It literally it started off the whole thing.
Yeah, it is.
And then when it comes to Empire Strikes Back, it has that charm. It has that, like all the the original actors are just so great.
They are.
Like,
they work really well together.
Harrison Ford has such a charm to him, and he plays Han Solo so fucking well, And plus, there's like so many iconic scenes, definitely in Empire Strikes Back as well. So many locations and all that, and which is just one of the excessively many things that I could name off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah.
To me, I think it's telling when George Lucas went to do all his like special editions, the film that he edited the least was Empire Strikes Back. It was the one that he thought it's the one that he edited the least because of how good it was. And I feel like, honestly, it's, I don't really need to explain why Empire Strikes Back, but just as a broad generalization, it really expands the the trilogy, the original trilogies at least. It connects the trilogies to actually have some sort of like a coherent story. It's just such a great film. And I feel like... And I was going to say that Return of the Jedi was originally my favourite Star Wars film when I was much younger. But these days I've come around to thinking that the reason why I loved Return of the Jedi so much was because of the fact that Empire Strikes Back added all these new additions that were so great. So I feel like I shouldn't give credit... I feel like... It's kind of sad, but I feel like I shouldn't give credit to the newer films because they're relying so much on the old stuff that I feel like I have to go back and say, well, the old films were so great because they had all this original stuff.
Yeah, I see what you mean,
Whereas the new films, sure, they're great, but they rely heavily on old stuff, which isn't a bad thing, but I feel like that's more of a testament to how good the previous films were.
Well, that's true, yeah. Before I am cutting into your thing here, Alex, sorry. But I think this also goes back to what you're saying with A New Hope and sort of why I haven't put the original trilogy that high. Well, still high, but compared to the others. I think it's because, one, I'm the same. I've watched the original trilogy so many times. It has gotten super dull to me, I think. I think that's a big part of it. I have watched it, I will probably say at least 20 times. I swear to Christ, I've seen it so many times. Like, it's the films I've watched the most in my entire life. And I think maybe that is a big key thing. And, it is, again, a bit hypocritical when I say I put Rise of Skywalker at the top, when I say that I like it because it ties everything up, but then it relies on everything else. Then why wouldn't I say the others? But it's more or less that, I guess it's that thing with the dull thing. And I think the big reason why I think also why Empire Strikes Back...
I'm sure...
it is.
I'm sure, liking Return
Actually,
of the Jedi...
Actually, no, you're not allowed your opinion.
Liking Return of the Jedi is a pretty controversial opinion because of how much people hate Ewoks and stuff, so...
The thing is, with when it comes to... I feel like the big other factor to it is that the reason why a lot of people, I think, really love it as well, because... It's like the only sequel ever made that's done so well, like the sequel to a trilogy, right? It's one of the big sequels that it has managed to keep up expectations from the first film and even exceed them, right? That's like a really hard thing to do because obviously the first film's really good. It puts so much pressure on the second film, right? And Star Wars Empire Strikes Back nailed it. It managed to do such a good job. And that's sort of, I guess, another big thing why people really love it, because it did such a good job in continuing that Star Wars thing. Because I feel like that's a factor within the sequel trilogy. That's why not many people probably particularly like the new sequel trilogy, because The Last Jedi sadly didn't. It wasn't that film that could keep up that expectations or exceed them like Empire Strikes Back did. But you continue with your thing, Alex, first.
Well, that was the first two. Next I've got this Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
And now, I will preface this by saying that I think if I watch Revenge of the Sith today, it would probably be lower. Revenge of the Sith is the prequel trilogy, is a prequel movie that I've seen the second most, I think. I've seen Revenge of the Sith 3 times or twice, all the way through. And it's been a while since I've last seen it, but when I did see it, I was really young. I was a kid when I saw the film. So I think the reason why it's so high is because of the fact that a lot of the set pieces in the movie were cool. I just remember it being a good film, even though if I watched it today, it'd probably be a bad film. But I remember it being good, and that's why it's pretty high up. Next, I've got A New Hope because of the fact that I've seen it so much that it kind of loses its charm, I guess, almost. It's not a terrible movie. It's an excellent movie, but if you see the best movie over time, if you see the same movie over and over again, you'll eventually... You just want something fresh, Next, I've got The Force Awakens. I've only seen this film once, all the way through, and the reason... And I want to put it higher, but the problem is the other movies are just so great in my memory that I literally cannot put it higher, because I want to watch it again, genuinely, but I really liked The Force Awakens. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great start to a trilogy. Again, it banked a lot on Star Wars nostalgia. At the time, I didn't really mind, but... I feel like that's evolved sort of into its own morph, I guess. Next, I've got The Last Jedi, which is because of the fact that it tried something new, so I think automatically that puts it at least above Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi was, my feelings on The Last Jedi are mixed. I said that I didn't like it, which is true. I don't like the Star Wars aspects of it. it's almost the opposite of the Rise of Skywalker. I don't like the Star Wars aspects of it, but I love the film, like, actually the film's story almost, like the film's structure and its elements. But I dislike that in Rise of Skywalker when I like the Star Wars parts of Rise of Skywalker, so they're almost two completely opposite films.
Mm-hmm.
Next I've got The Phantom Menace, which is, I actually like The Phantom Menace. I know a lot of people don't. I will say this, I like all the films above Attack of the Clones, which is the one film I can't stand. But yeah, I like...
this is pod racing.
I like Attack of the Clones. Sorry, no, not Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace. I like Phantom Menace.
He said it, he likes Attack of the Clones.
Yikes.
I'll just remove everything else. No, continue.
Don't you love such dialogue such as, I hate sand. It's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere.
Yeah, but come on, there's like 10 seconds,
It's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere.
Yeah.
Can't you love everything else from it?
It's a great...
No, that one line ruined the entire fucking film.
Phantom Menace, I liked it. A lot of people complain about Jar Jar Binks all the time. I personally never saw him as that much of an issue, but...
yeah, I'm the same. I understand he is a bit annoying, but...
He's very...
I wanted to see him in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, what the fuck,
Jar Jar.
you know?
That's the god tier 40.
I wanted that to be the plot twist.
Next I've got...
That Jar Jar was actually controlling Palpatine.
Well said.
It was the Gungans, they were rising.
So was Jar Jar the whole time. But next I've got Rise of Skywalker, which I feel like, again, the reason why I've rated it so lowly is because it banks so much on Star Wars nostalgia that I feel like nothing it does in the movie that's original I enjoyed. Everything was dragged up from the original trilogy, or parts of it from the prequel trilogy when the voices came through. I even liked when they had Hayden Christensen say, like, you know, do it, Rey, or whatever. Because I thought it's a good way to
do it, Rey.
It's a good way to tie into the films, but it didn't do a lot original. And Attack of the Clones, I just got it at the bottom because I'll be honest, I haven't seen it since the first time I saw it, which was like...
I mean, it's probably the shittest Star Wars film ever.
11 years ago, and I have had no want to go back and watch it yet. So, yeah, that's my rating, I guess.
So last time you watched it was when you were 9?
Mine's pretty... my list is pretty traditional, although I feel like some people would disagree with my rating of Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, and maybe The Last Jedi.
I think actually the way you've structured your ranking of the prequels is that I actually do agree with you. Like, so instead of putting them for me as a flat tie, I would definitely Revenge of the Sith, and then Phantom Menace and Attack Clone.
Yeah.
For the actual exact same reasons, because Samuel L. Jackson, oh my god. Revenge of the Sith, oh my god.
It's too dangerous to be left alive. If only Mace Windu crossed his
The Senate will decide your fate. I am Senate. Like legit, Revenge of the Sith. Oh my god, such a good point. And then Phantom Menace. I always think about the fucking pod racing scene.
The pod racing was so good.
Yeah, and then we just don't talk about that.
I don't remember a lot from Attack of the Clones, to be honest.
Why do you shit on it? I don't know why people shit on it so much. I understand the dialogue is trash. I have watched it last time I watched it.
The reason why I don't like it is because I haven't seen it and I don't feel like I need to go back and see it.
I feel like the big reason why people hate it is because of the fucking one line in it. It's like,
but I feel like
fucking thing.
But like,
no, that being said, there are other lines in it. There are other lines in it. I will say.
I feel like you're forgetting how boring most of the movie is. Most of the movie is
yeah,
just
but
people,
you haven't watched it for 9 years.
Not just that, like the Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith. Even it's just people talking and walking. Like it's not. George Lucas was definitely sitting in a chair when he directed those films. He didn't know when to get up.
Like I don't personally think it's that shit. Though it is my last Star Wars film, I still don't think it's trash. I definitely think there's terrible moments throughout it. But I still think it has some really good moments in it. It just doesn't, as I said when it came to, because it's the second film, as I said at the end.
Okay, now name another one.
I would say when there were, I think it's a bit of a sort of quirky thing, but when C-3PO's in the
in the fucking machine.
In the machine, he's like a droid and he starts killing all the Jedi.
Actually, no, I will say that. Actually, you know what? I will say one of my favorite part from Attack of the Clones was the Jango Fett Obi-Wan fight.
That's another fucking... I really like that. I like the Jango Fett, when Obi-Wan has to discover this whole thing and he finds out there's a fucking Mandalorian who's making an entire clone army.
Is Jango Fett actually a Mandalorian? Or does he just have a Mandalorian?
Okay. So, well, technically... he is a Mandalorian because Mandalorians aren't a single race. They're a
It's
culture.
a creed.
It's a creed. So technically, he is a Mandalorian. But if you look at it at the
technically not.
film, if you look at it as the film like that, he doesn't really come across as a Mandalorian because he takes his helmet off. No Mandalorian can take their helmet off, and he takes it off all the time. So he isn't
Like a
technically a
bitch.
Mandalorian.
Alright, well, let's go to Chris's
But he's
ratings
still
then.
technically is.
Chris can explain his.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did interrupt y'all with, like, some of mine.
That's a fine. My list was
apologies
very
about that.
interrupted. No one wanted to give me the respect I
Yeah.
deserved.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I did talk about how, A New Hope was definitely my OG, because, like, it basically started the whole thing, and I haven't seen it a lot of times, so I don't get annoyed by the repetition of, like, seeing it, so it's definitely there on my number one. And then obviously Empire Strikes Back, because like it's definitely, as I said before, it's got that charm. It's got so many iconic moments. It's great. The charisma between characters / actors is just amazing. And then for like my third one, so Rise of Skywalker, just simply the fact that it's just visually, I think, and then for me on a personal preference, I am for the whole nostalgia thing. I love nostalgia. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex.
I don't think nostalgia is a bad thing. I think it just needs to be tempered. That's all.
Oh yeah, no, I get
Like,
that. I get
I
that.
really
But I think
enjoyed
for me,
Jurassic World, and that was a nostalgia film a bit, but it also did a lot
It
of
was.
I'm sorry, but no, I'm sorry, I don't like
we
Jurassic
can't do a
World.
podcast without Alex mentioning Jurassic Park.
I love Jurassic Park. It's my favorite film of all time.
I
It
don't
is.
like
It is
Jurassic
amazing.
Park.
I love
I don't
it.
think it's that great. I don't like Jurassic Park,
Fuck you.
but
Holy. Don't worry, I loved Jurassic World. It was
I
okay.
don't like
It was
it.
good.
I haven't seen
It
the
was
new
awesome.
one. I have no interest in
I don't
seeing
know,
it.
fucking
Chris
trash.
Pratt-
Do not fucking
Chris
watch it.
Pratt
It's
was
so
amazing.
trash.
Every time I see
Fuck.
Chris Pratt, I always think it's
Have you
Star
seen
Wars.
the fucking
Holy.
dinosaur? It's on the docks and the whole place is dying. That's what the film is. It's just a fucking dying film. Sorry. Continue.
Oof, man, we got some untapped anger from Ariel.
Sorry.
Someone forced me to watch.
I'm not a
Jurassic
big
World.
fan of the Jurassic World and Jurassic Park series.
You don't like the original
think so,
Jurassic
too.
Park,
No, I'm not a big fan of it. Come on,
man.
continue.
and you like Attack
Yeah,
of the
I mean-
Clones.
Fuck off! I don't like Jurassic Park. I just don't like it.
Why?
That's
What's
another
not to
podcast.
like?
Let's fucking talk about this. This is a Star Wars podcast.
No, I want this
Okay,
answered.
okay.
Why don't you like Jurassic Park?
No, we're interrupting Christian.
Why do you have against
fucking
Jurassic Park?
everything. Okay,
How about
go.
we can talk about that in another episode of the Hive Chat. Anyway,
Nice sound
I
bite.
feel like I think I've already talked enough about Rise of Skywalker in the previous parts. So I mean, you already know why I love it.
Yep.
Then we have Return of the Jedi because it's just the other OG stuff that I haven't said. Honestly, I haven't actually watched it a lot. Like I don't really have a lot to say about it. I think just because in general I love the original series the most.
Yeah.
You know, if you know what I mean.
On a whole, the
Yeah,
original
yeah,
series
yeah.
is always top.
Yeah, but that's why Rise of Skywalker just and then we got Last Jedi and then Force Awakens. It's just like for me, obviously, it's the sequel series is going to beat the prequels. You know, obviously. I just feel like Last Jedi was definitely like an artsy thing, which I love. Like watching all those speeders on the white sand, like you know, fucking all the red in there, and then the fight between Ben and Luke was amazing, and then you know all this other like connections, and then like obviously the plot was a bit you know, but like you know it's some stuff does correlate with like it just in general with this whole sequel series. Force Awakens, you know, it's got my boy Han Solo, and they killed them all. So annoying. And then I had Revenge of the Sith. You know, I feel like it's kind of weird though, because like you see the prequel series, and you're just like, you know, as a movie, it's not that good. But then you're just like, you know what? I'm actually really enjoying watching this because all of the memes that I've seen are in this.
Hang
They've
on.
got posthumously better.
It is. Honestly, the prequels have technically gotten better
over time.
simply because of the simple fact, because there's so many memes now from it. And you just like, you watch it as a film now and you're like, oh my God, this is hilarious.
See, that's what I mean though. But by original Star Wars had that like unintentional charm and like funniness about it because it was so awkward and quirky. Maybe that's just me. Probably just me.
I feel
It's
like
all personal
That's
preference.
a game I
it's
haven't
also-
heard
yeah.
in a long time.
I feel like it's another thing also when it comes to this is that when it comes
all
to looking
Ben.
at the Star Wars
Oh,
films,
man.
I am more of a person
I
who
want to go
would
to
take it
Tashi
more
Station to pick up some
seriously.
power converters.
Like I take it more serious than I would as like you, Alex, for me. But that's more or less because of the way I like certain stories. That's why I read certain stories and stuff like that. I take it a lot more seriously, and that's why I enjoy it a lot more. I think I sort of don't look for that more sort of that quirky charm, I guess. But yeah, what were your last two, Christian?
Oh, right. So just Phantom Menace and then Tech, because Tech Learn's worst. And then Phantom Menace, that pod racing scene, man. It's just great. And then little Annie, doing the whole, now this is pod racing. Oh,
Oh, trust me, that's a good trick.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, I don't really have a lot to say about the prequel. I haven't seen them in a while. It's still a bit hard to really elaborate on that.
That's fair.
But that's just my general thing.
I'm assuming, out of everything, I think we'd all agree is that out of all of them, the prequel trilogy would be at the bottom. Out of like in terms of if we rank the trilogies, and more than likely it'd be the original trilogy at the top.
Yeah, as a whole, I'd say original trilogy, sequel trilogy, and then prequel trilogy.
I mean, that's literally basically my list. It's just the only difference is that I put Rise of Skywalker number 3.
Yeah. Like again, it's all personal preference. When it comes to
But I also think that the prequel
rankings,
trilogy has higher highs, but also lower lows, and I feel like that's something that you just don't get from the sequel trilogy, at least. Like, the high of like Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting over like the lava and shit. That's so much cooler than anything that was given to us in the sequels.
You were my brother, Anakin.
I loved you. I hate you. Yeah.
You're supposed to destroy them, not join them.
like I guess talking about this.
Your rage, you killed her.
No.
When it comes to all these Star Wars films, what would be? Do you remember what was the first one you watched? Was it A New Hope?
The first Star Wars film I ever watched.
Empire Strikes Back.
I think it was Phantom
Return of
Menace.
the Jedi?
Believe it or not.
Oh.
It was either Phantom Menace or it was either Phantom Menace or Return of the Jedi. I can't remember which one. It was one of those two. Those were my first Star Wars films I watched.
Yeah, for me it was either Phantom Menace or A New Hope, because I think like yonks ago, like we our family had the whole tapes and all that, on the fucking little cube TV, and we would watch and I think my dad had lots of collections, and I think so I feel like definitely I think it was actually New Hope. It's the very first thing I saw.
For me, it was Empire Strikes Back. I think it was that one, if I'm not mistaken. It would have been that, or it would have been New Hope, but I think it's more likely Empire Strikes Back. And then I watched A New Hope because I didn't realize that was the first one. But that was ages ago.
But that's also the great thing. You could literally just watch Empire Strikes Back as a standalone film, and you don't need any backstory. It's just that good.
It's that good. That's why I just despise it, because I've watched it too many times. When did the prequel trilogies come out? They came out early 2000, right?
1999, 2000.
2002, and then 2005.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so... Yeah, we were like 5 by the time they all came out.
Whoa, doxing me, I don't fucking know.
Sorry? Oh, sorry. You were 15.
Yes, yeah. I was 30.
30 at the time, 60.
Now 46.
When...
we're all younglings.
Yeah, we're all younglings.
Hopefully Hayden Christensen won't come.
We'd be killed.
Oh, shit. We'd all be dead. Do you think that when it came to... what do you think? Because this is sort of like... it came out when the Force Awakens came out. It is a bit of a controversial thing, but... what do you think of how the new sequel decided to use Rey as sort of their lead, more or less? Then because when it came out,
not so much in the Last Jedi.
When 2014, some shit like that, I think. Because I remember sometimes at the time there was a lot of talk on that when it first came out. Because it was different, especially putting it on something as big as Star Wars. It was definitely a changed thing. I definitely think for me anyway, when it came out, I didn't really worry too much about it. But I feel like it was also that same thing with Star Wars was trying to do again. I've said this before, that Star Wars was trying to do this new thing when it first came out. I think that it was trying to do that again. And it succeeded in doing that because, it brought like a prominent female lead in the whole thing. Sadly, it just didn't do it all for the rest of the story. But it managed to, break a barrier there in the sense of putting, Rey, what's her name, Daisy Ridley, I think her name is, right?
Daisy Ridley.
Yeah.
As the main actor for it instead of like some other guy. And I think like that's another thing which I sort of really like Star Wars for. And I think I can't really think, but I don't know if really the prequels did that. And maybe that's like another reason why I didn't do. Actually, no, it sort of did. It changed. It did a different story, but then it didn't really work out. But I think that's like another really cool thing I like about it is that when these new Star Wars trilogies come out, they try something different, at least something different to sort of the mainstream movies. So yeah, the original trilogy, it brought about this whole new science fiction space story stuff, right? The prequels, I guess it sort of tried to do this sort of, I don't know, I guess like just a different story, different take on things. It didn't really do anything wildly like that could change. I guess that what I'm trying to get is that like trying to change the movie industry in a bit.
What?
It's sort of extending it a bit. But like, for example, if it wasn't for Star Wars, a lot of these other science fiction films probably wouldn't obviously be here because of its influence, right? There's tons of fucking things that have been influenced by Star Wars. And sort of now more or less when it comes to the sequel, that it had sort of all these other things. Also, like I guess another big thing is visuals anyway. Like obviously, sequel trilogy does an amazing job with that. But I feel like it does something like it just goes. I don't know. I guess it just tries and does something differently. Is sort of what I'm getting at. And I think that's sort of one thing that I think that has made Star Wars sort of what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's managed to do something beyond the traditional mainstream in changing something or adding something new. I don't know if everyone agrees. I don't know if you particularly agree.
No, I agree. I definitely
feel like
agree with
that is like something I've come to understand with it.
Like Star Wars just in general has like defined what it means to like go against traditional norms of like storytelling and like has clearly influenced today's like media and like different like movies and pop culture, obviously. A little back reference to space.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's definitely going to be a thing that's going to be remembered as like this changed sci-fi.
Yeah.
I
don't
what
feel
it
like
meant to like really think about how it means to be like before Star Wars, like what were really people doing, like thinking about what sci-fi was. It was more like mystical, mythological. This is like more actual, like scientific, but like more on the sense of like just something different.
Yeah. What about you, Alec?
I don't know.
Alex.
It's a very easy thing to do to just take credit for putting women and minorities in film and using that as a way to dissuade any criticism from the actual film itself.
Well, it's not that, but it's more or less sort of, I feel like what Star Wars like did and what sort of, it had that hidden meaning behind it.
What hidden meaning?
Well, not meaning, but this sort of, I guess, change. It sort of went to change things. It made science fiction movies sort of a new whole thing. Because before that, right, as you're saying, all the sort of the other ones in terms of, there wasn't anything really like Star Wars, obviously, at the time. Whenever it came out, however long ago now. And then sort of the prequels came around. I will say, like, to be honest, I can't really think about that. I think of a way that really changed anything. But I think also when it comes to like this, the new film, anyway, I feel like, yeah, that was a big thing when they decided to use a female lead for it. Because, considering Disney fucking own this, obviously they're going to make a fucking tons of money from it. And are the biggest sort of movie franchise. They sort of control a lot of it. But it's still like, I feel like there's still that that innate sort of thing that Star Wars is just sort of like this change in I guess movie culture, if anything, and it's influenced so many things, which I think has been, obviously the biggest thing that Star Wars has ever done is how influential it's been on so many different mediums and the likes. And I feel like maybe there won't be any more of these sort of like any Star Wars ones that will really do it like this, because I feel like, I don't know what the next Star Wars film will be, but maybe there'll have to be some other film that does it. Like, I would say maybe even Marvel did it, really. They really changed some things when it came to when movies, in terms of like how the hell did they fit 22 movies together or whatever it was, and make this sort of gigantic universe, and it went and did that. But I feel like, you could say that for a lot of franchise films. But no, I feel like that's one big thing I take away from the Star Wars thing, when the Star Wars Skywalker Saga anyway, is it sort of did this thing for change in certain things. More or less, I would say it was more prominent in the original trilogy, because it went beyond that of what people's perception of this science fiction genre would have been. Of course, I wasn't born back then, so I can't really know exactly, but I feel like that sort of is at least an influence, what I'm saying back then. Did you want to say something to that, Alex?
No, I'm not really. I've just been checked out of this whole discussion because I don't think that Star Wars is... I don't think the sequel trilogy was groundbreaking at all.
I don't think it was groundbreaking, but I think it at least had some... It had that little bit of charm of that, what Star Wars, the hidden thing behind Star Wars was. Sort of like a force for change.
I disagree. Respectfully.
Why is that?
I think that the Marvel movies have influenced cinema way more than Star Wars has, at least the sequel trilogy has. Like, what do you think Star Wars has changed? Be specific.
As I said, in terms of like the sequel trilogy anyway, you're talking about, right?
Yeah, be specific. Use a specific example.
I would say the biggest one is having a female lead in it, and having sort of in terms of...
But is that just a change for Star Wars, or is that a change for film?
I feel like it's a change for film.
You seriously think so?
Yes.
I'm gonna split ways here. I think it's because I do agree with you, Ariel, but at the same time I agree more with Alex on this point, because it's more like we've had plenty of films that have had like strong female roles, like that we've already established in the film industry that we don't have to go with the norm of like back in the day where it's like we have to have a strong male lead. There's no way a woman could do that. Obviously that's gone now. That's not really something to think about. But obviously I think you're right in the sense of it's Star Wars. Like it's new for, like we haven't, like there's been Leia, but like it's Daisy, like, and Padme, yeah, but they weren't really like full on strong like first leading roles, but Rey is.
No.
Yeah. And like that's new for Star Wars. But that's just how I've taken it. I mean, obviously, some people might look.
I don't think it's going to change film. I think it might inspire some fans.
No, it's not going to completely change film, but as it's sort of like influence it.
I think the original trilogy did.
The original trilogy definitely did.
The original trilogy definitely did. Because like it literally inspired so many different things.
There was loads of people saying like when Billy D. Williams played Lando, there was loads of like, oh, there's no black people in Star Wars. And then when Empire came out, there were loads of black people in it. You had a main character and you had a load of background characters. I mean, I'm not going to go out on a limb to say that I think that's influenced film as a whole. That's a pretty bold statement, and I think that's something you need.
Not influence as a whole. I said sort of it at least has influenced film in certain aspects. And I feel like the other thing here saying that
aspect you said.
No, but going back to something is that we can't really say much because, for example, the sequel trilogy's only been out since the last film, only about a couple of days. And sort of we don't really know what it will do for the rest of the things. But I feel like I'm sort of I was taking the example of using Rey, the sort of female lead in it, as the idea of what Star Wars was doing. It wasn't fully changing. I will say, I would retract that, but I feel as it still had an influence on a lot of things. And I don't really know what those influences will be in the next 10 years, because I'm not a time traveler. But I feel like it will have some changes in certain things. But saying to that, I feel like it was a pretty big thing putting someone like that in one of the biggest, movie franchises, which is Star Wars. I haven't really seen many other films do that. Not even Marvel's done that yet, right? Obviously, they're going to do that now with what's the film? Black Widow.
What do you mean they're going to do it? They've already done it. They've done Captain Marvel.
With Black Widow, that's the other one I was talking about, Captain Marvel and Thingo. But in terms of
would you count Elektra?
Catwoman.
Oh god, that movie.
But I don't know. I think the main thing I take away from it is that it's that whole thing with Star Wars. I feel like is an innate thing of Star Wars when it comes to sort of it had this big influence.
Like look at Rise of Skywalker with the first LGBT representation in Star Wars, which is a big step up, right? It's great, but it was one kiss in the background that was instantly edited out for Chinese audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems so superficial. It's like they want the cake of, oh yeah, we're a really progressive company that has big ideas. But at the same time, ultimately, it just shows that the one thing that these companies care about is profit. They don't give a fuck about true representation. Which, I suppose that even if they don't give a fuck about it, it still has an impact, I guess. Because just residual, I guess, people would think, oh, a little girl can play with Star Wars now. But I think that intentions and the effects are two different things, I guess. Sure, I guess you could say that the film may positively influence young girls to follow their dreams, but the intentions were never fucking about empowering women. The intentions were always just about, oh, now we can sell our lightsabers to 50% of the other gender or whatever.
I know what you mean that, but I just personally don't like looking at it just like that. I don't like thinking this whole thing. Obviously, we live in a world where money rules and big companies rule because of that. And I just don't like just looking at that. I guess it's more or less of a hope that that's not the intention. Anyway. It is, but I just want to quickly tie that up. There's that back to sort of the main thing here when we said at the start is opinions all, each to their own and all that. I just definitely think that in terms of, I just look at it as that I just hope these big companies aren't just doing it purely for the money. Though I have said that is a big part of it. But I definitely think there is still that force for change in some aspect of it. At least some people in that industry are doing that. And I think that's, one thing that I feel like is such a treasured thing I love of Star Wars. Even if maybe not many people look at it like that, I look at it like that. And that's why something I take away from Star Wars is something so big has managed to change or influence so many things. Just remember, this whole thing came out of one guy's head.
Maybe this is just because I remember the original posters for The Force Awakens being compared to the ones that they showed in China. So it was a comparison of the poster for The Force Awakens in China and the poster from The Force Awakens in America. And the only difference between the two was that Finn was so much smaller on the Chinese poster. So I feel like, again, it's representation, but at what cost? Fuck Disney. That's what I'm trying to say. Fuck Disney.
Oof. I don't think everyone at Disney's an asshole. So, alright, well, I believe that should be it. And I think we've managed to talk about a lot in terms of Star Wars anyway. And
very positive conversations.
Hopefully, at least, I feel like I was positive in most of it. And
that's fine. You can have negative thoughts once in a while, Ariel.
I do, but I feel like I have a lot more positive thoughts. Cause
next week we're going to learn
just
why
personally
you don't like
hope that Vibe, they the people who make it, make it for fun and whatsoever. But I think that's where we're going to end it for the Star Wars special of this one. Wrapping up the entire Skywalker Saga. It is sad that it is ended, but it's all endings. There are always new beginnings. It ended
40 years ago.
Well, honestly, yeah, it's been a good ride. But I'm honestly really just looking forward to season 2 of The Mandalorian.
I don't know, Christian. Nah. Mandalorian.
No, you better fucking. I'm so keen.
Either way, thank you both of you for joining. It's been
You're
a
welcome.
pleasure talking about it.
Thanks for
and
having
being
me.
shit talked on my opinions and each other's. So I believe, as always, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
See you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.